of our Dharma friends. We hope that you are all well, and we hope that you are all happy. And so as we engage in our activities today, please do this with the thought, with the motivation, thinking, I will take this good human rebirth, this good opportunity, and direct it towards positive activities. So just to remind you of that verse of the Buddha, where he says that I have pointed out the path to liberation, but it is you yourself who must actualize it. So we understand that we have that responsibility, but we also understand that we have a path to complete liberation from suffering, and it is our task to try to traverse it, to try to go in the right direction. So whether one is a Dharma believer, is a believer in Buddhism or not, really, all of us are the same in that we are all seeking a stable type of happiness. So if we are seeking real happiness, we understand that we want a happiness that is stable. And we understand that that happiness is something that is developed internally within the mind. And what we'll find is if we make an attempt to study and practice the Buddha's teachings, whether or not we might officially consider ourselves a Buddhist or not, we will be able to experience an increase in that happiness. So it's a little bit like if you're suffering from some type of physical illness and you go to the doctor and he or she prescribes you a specific type of medicine and you just sort of take that medicine trusting in the doctor. You don't necessarily, well, most people are not going to ask, where is that medicine made? What are all of the things in it? And ask for an exhaustive explanation, right? Because you know the medicine will make you better. It's a bit like that. So all of the advice, all of the teachings of the Buddha, it's really important to understand that these were all given for the sake of helping us to develop that happiness. This is their sole purpose. So it helps us to identify what are the difficult minds that lead to our problems. What are the positive minds that lead to our happiness? And what direction do we go? How do we cultivate? It is all about that. We can see really clearly that from activities like watching TV, listening to music, and so forth, we might be able to relax and have a bit of temporary happiness. But we can see pretty clearly that those activities are not going to help us achieve a sort of ultimate happiness. Yeah, so these things provide that sort of temporary respite sort of happiness, right? But that pleasure, that happiness is not stable. It's like a bubble on the surface of water that can pop at any moment. So any sort of samsaric thing, in other words, any external thing to happiness will be like that. But if we take as our strategy for happiness mental development, working on our mind, applying the teachings, what we'll find is that from day to day, from month to month, and so forth, there's actually an increasing stability, more and more of that happiness.
哦，他那是等你这在下修，等你这个等到一那用双保证你就要不些，那是等你那是没得要的是，
그러시네.
等到一那用
어,
双保证你就些个逻辑没要的是，
아,
俺
네네.
都是个没的话是，点点都是
And we can definitely develop these things that contribute to our happiness. If we think about the stories in the text, for example, of beings in an animal birth who brought forth love, compassion, and so forth, then in our current state as human beings, we definitely can develop those.
哦，他那是等你些他目前的，我是他来什么东北的了，那个是，你的车什么是讲的，他来点意思。
So, just a brief introduction, and then to begin, we are just going to take a few moments to relax our body and mind, to focus the body and mind. Oh, I noticed our recording stopped. I don't know if that was intentional, but just to let you know, the recording stopped. Okay.
就没谁看看了，他你看起来可我们这个没什么去。
Think any of those unwholesome minds that are causing me difficulties, causing me problems, for the moment, I won't pay them attention.
有些了盘着送，有木了起来送，电力机不过了没办法。
Use as our object of focus, our object of meditation, the breath. Breathing out, I'm aware I'm breathing out. Breathing in, I'm aware I'm breathing in.
就没被谁说啊，我都开始来白一那有那有，还有我当中这个没什么去。
So, whatever type of problem, whatever type of distraction arises in the mind, whether it comes or doesn't come, I'm not going to pay it any attention. Not sure why it keeps saying recording in progress and recording stopping.
我说说是你本就我去多年了，我今晚开始啥个样那样，他这个嘛的谁个不愿意，也把其他没把其他意思。
And whatever, think of any mantra that you find helpful, any mantra that you find protects your mind from distraction, and focus on that mantra within the mind. Focus on that mantra mentally.
谁个弄了我们他的说法，谁的把其面的。
So, for example, you could take Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Swaha and think, I am resting my mind on that sound, but mentally.
你现在你把千万宝宝东西带来，点点发现了，你都有什么？
And think through this focus in this way. I have infused my mind with virtue, with a great rainfall of virtue.
一直干的，现在干的了是吧？就把六个地方我就专门把去把一种。
And through the power of this practice, anything that's been troubling my body, anything that has been troubling my mind, with the gentle wind of this practice, those clouds have been blown away to reveal the sky.
라용 미바든 저와도는 다 시. 또 벌리는 사파지 다이나. 아니 어떤 나타나 전부 몇가지. 전에 주실라서 내 좀 것이 도한 거스.
So let us shift the focus of our mind now from inward to outward. And let us think about the outward situation of this world that we inhabit. We can see how in this world various problems manifest, both big and small.
그러니까 침보를 찾아가야는 뭐게 와준 내용을 야 아무나 다가는 지금 뭔지스.
In terms of the big problems, we see illnesses, pandemics, we see wars, we see natural disasters, and so forth.
이나요 소설을 다 되니까나 드리고 강의 되지는 신본적으로 단적으로 사는 것 뭐야 기사 니까 지금 딱 기본기는 무슨 말이지.
But we think of all the beings that those afflict, somehow we are not afflicted by these disasters. We are not afflicted by these wars and so forth. And if we contemplate our situation, even amongst humanity, we see our situation as very fortunate. We have many conditions for happiness.
소소 강의 주주들이 지모서 닮아도 강의 미네를 뭐다 되니까 기본 미네를도 무슨 말이지.
We just have this habit of seeing the small problems that we experience, grasping on them and making those small problems into something big. But if we really think about it, there's no reason to do that, right? We have every reason for happiness.
기본이 뭐 무엇이 가시니 가제 다들레도 세 셀레지가 뭐야 이
And then having recognized the good fortune of our situation, having recognized our reasons for being happy, take that feeling of well-being and use that to relax the body and mind.
세그로제 쇼마도 이지로제 미네지에 세기와 대중반무지다 디슈파 데모지만 로토와서
And having relaxed our mind, see the nature of our mind and its positive aspects, infused with qualities like love, compassion, and so forth. And then develop the intention that I am going to improve those qualities of love and compassion as much as possible. And in order to be able to do this, I will, from the very depths of my mind, from the bottom of my heart, request the blessings of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas to assist. So we'll begin the prayers. Tumbo chom den de jin je ba dra chom ba yon da bar zo be song ye jin ba dang sha Sudamba Devar Shiva Jidekeba Kyoda Vekalo Yorwa Lama me pa lam da min ha gi ten pa sa ge cho de gya wa sha gya tu na cha se lo chen de kya su ji so I just wanted to mention, I see what's happening now. So do all of you hear when it says recording in progress and recording stopped? So that happens every time the host is switched. So for whatever reason, the host has been switching back and forth, and every time that happens, you'll hear recording stopped, and then when it switches the host, recording in progress again. So I just to let anyone know who's the host, stay on the current host now, and then that will stop. Yeah. So yeah. Geshe said, "Do you guys hear that? Because it is a bit distracting." Yeah, so they do hear that. Yeah. So I think the way to stop that from happening is not to switch the host. That's what I'm guessing.
The way for that not to happen is for my internet not to keep on going up and down.
Oh no, sorry. Dave internet
I think I cut out again.
Oh, okay. Yes, no, then this will be yeah, just a minor practice of patience. I'm sorry that your internet's not working, Dave. It's very annoying when that happens. I think we've all experienced it. Anyways, we'll continue with the prayers. Yeah, sorry about that. Tumba chomdende deje cheba drachomba yang dapa zobe sangye ripa dang shaksu demba dewa shepa shiten chempa chebu kado gyurwa lana meba radam mi namgi tepa sangye chomdende Jawa Shakya Tubala Chasero Chedu Gyatsu Chi Ho Tenpa Chomden de Teshin Shepa Drachompa Yandaba Zobe Sangye Shepa Dang Shapsu Demba Deva Shepa Shiden Chempa Chebu Dube Kano Gyurwa Lana Mepa Ladami Namgi Temba Sangye Chomden de Pejawa Shakya Tubala Chaselu Chedung Gyatsu Chi Do the mandala offering. So ji bun yu yong shin men do ra No, Lama, Idam Guru Ratnam Hendalakam Niryantarya. Refuge in Bodhicitta.
sonje
Chedan sogu chenam la jangcho bardu dani gyalsu chi dagi chenyen gebe sonam gu jola benjir sangye joba sho Chedan sogu chenam la Jancho bardu dani gyatsu ji dagi chenyen gebe sonam ge jola penjir sangye joba shu Chedan sogi chenam la jancho bardu dani gyatsu ji dagi chenyen gebe sonam ge jola penjir sangye joba
야, 지세.
This-
어떤 아주 당긴가 세금가 서로 와서 다 그게 단다 깨져야 그래서 되는 있는 것습니다.
So Geshe said that when we were doing the meditation, we were doing what is known as the mental recitation of the mantra, and the computer was helping us do the verbal recitation mantra.
저다 듣는 중에 당긴가서 같은 거 마셔도 뭐지 하고 와서 그래 그 마셔야 돼. 들어서 건 거대라니나. 아니 와서야 그 배치도 거자게 배다 2년도에 그까지 오랬습니다.
So we've stated it before, but perhaps it bears mentioning again that this practice of mental recitation, right, where we recite that mantra internally within the mind, the benefit of the mental recitation is not only do we get the merits of reciting the mantra, but we also get the development of concentration that comes through meditation. So you get both when you do mental recitation.
어떤 처음에 비슷하게 바이로야지 오페도 디자스 워르와스 주도 맞잖아.
하긴.
처음에 비슷하도 세도 돌아서 봐 거주도 맞을 거를 다긴 라바무지 되나 그래서 바이로야레스.
And what you'll find is the practice of mental recitation also, right, when the mind is a little bit busy. When we do the practice of mental recitation, those discursive thoughts, those mental projections, and so forth can be subdued.
단지와지 가된 가서 들었더니 라자 조지들은 넘어를 다 키우들어서 그래서 중요하게스 와티는 올라
아,
여기 벌을 좀 지대와
기대봐, 알레. 가든지야 되다. 소소
말은
가서야 돼.
답에 지야
그래서.
그래서 주로 지가와
그래서.
어디다 뒤는 가르수요 하세나 가르서 고마를 빼자네라 저는 고마야 보고 지나 봐 용화이나 제가 고마 뭐 용이 말을 좀 마음에 받지
So there is a text by the protector Nagarjuna, and I'm sorry I didn't get the text that Geshe said. Apologies, but it talks about the benefits that we get through churning milk are that we bring forth stainless butter.
어떤 무신가로서 샘이 되냐면 바칼에 소속을 다 용화이나 유르도 친구 주시서 주시 유르도 봐 용화이나 그래서 좀 마음에 받지.
Similarly, when we churn our mind through a practice, and in that way we are able to lessen the afflictions more and more, the pure essence aspect of the mind emerges. So the meaning of the verse is something like that. So the empty aspect of the mind, the emptiness of the mind itself is stainless, right? And when we are able to subdue the afflictions, the aspect of the mind itself also becomes stainless. So we talk about true cessations and true has often. Gokden So when the afflictions are subdued and the empty aspect of the mind's emptiness is brought forth in the absence of the afflictions. This is a way of understanding true cessations. So that empty aspect of the mind becomes true cessations, and the mind aspect, right, the other side of that becomes true paths. So the actualization happens in stages, right? Semkandistrogeris? So when true paths are brought forth in the mind and true paths are actualized, that's like you're pushing out the afflictions, just like you would push out a thief from your house. So after those afflictions have been pushed out through the true paths being actualized in the mind, then one continues to meditate. And Geshe is just saying it's not necessary, you don't really meditate for a very long time. One continues to meditate in the absence of the afflictions, then the emptiness aspect of the mind emerges fully, and then true cessations are actualized. And so once the true cessations are actualized within the mind and that is brought forth, it's like you have shut the door to the house of the mind so that that thief, so that the afflictions can never again return. So the first step, right, the first step when we meditate on true paths is to get the thief out of the house, right, to clear those afflictions away. And then after that, right, the emptiness of the mind can be fully realized and true cessations can be achieved. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama confirms this, that, you know, he sort of reflects, right? If I were able to fully actualize true cessations, then at last the mind would fully be at peace. I would be fully relaxed. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama sort of indicates, sort of hints that there's hope of maybe achieving those true cessations in this very life, or manifesting that aspect. So we talked about actualizing true paths within the mind, and we can relate this to our discussions of both emptiness and dependent arising. So first, we first bring forth a valid cognition of that emptiness. Once we have brought forth that valid cognition of emptiness, we continue to meditate. And at the moment that direct realization of emptiness is brought forth, we have actualized true paths, right? The true paths part of the Four Noble Truths. We have actualized true paths. And also from the method side, right, we've been talking about love, compassion, bodhicitta. And as these are developed in the mind, and as they start to be brought forth, there's a point where these are perfected, right? In other words, these qualities of love, compassion, and bodhicitta are perfectly refined. So these minds, love, compassion, and so forth, they are very powerful, they are very valuable, and they can be sort of perfected, but they have their limitations, right? They have their great feelings and their great aspirations, but those will remain real aspirations without the actualization, in the absence of that realization of emptiness. Huh? The mind that is truly making that path towards the complete actualization possible is that mind realizing emptiness. Not too what you sorry, I'm lacking clarity about this, so I just want to check. Yeah, dinso jumpa dang ningje dang dinso ale. Okay, yes, so sorry, Geshe said a different way. Now it's clear to me, so maybe it will also be clear to you, but maybe you understood already. So love, compassion, and bodhicitta are like these minds that wish to go to that specific destination of enlightenment and whatnot, right? The mind of emptiness is actually like walking along that path or taking whatever vehicle, the part that actually gets us there. So, of course, they help each other, right? The method and the wisdom size, love and compassion, and emptiness. They help each other. But in terms of the one that really clears away those final obstacles and allows that actualization of enlightenment, this is emptiness. And so that is our final object of attainment, that enlightenment. And in order to be able to reach that destination of enlightenment, we need a path that is both complete and unmistaken. So when we talk about the four powers, the first power is like the power of projection or the power of momentum. So Geshe would like to lead with a bit of a meditation on that power of momentum or that power of the force. And as a beginning, we'll just think, I am relaxing and I am bringing the four elements within my body into balance. When the four elements within the body are brought into balance, then the wind or the prana is brought into balance, and the mind and consciousness is brought into balance. And when the winds are brought fully into the channels and invigorated, pleasant feeling, right? A feeling of wellness manifests. When we think about ourself, when we think about others, whether human, animal, or any other being, we can see that we all possess these three doors of body, speech, and mind. And that self that is designated on the basis of the coming together of this body, speech, and mind, it is impermanent. It is changing from moment to moment, totally momentary. We grasp at it as if it is permanent or lasting. This self-designated upon those is not something that is truly existent or inherently existent, but we hold on to it as if it does really exist. We reify it as if it has some sort of pinpointable essence that we can point at. And this is what keeps us circling through samsara, through cyclic existence.
福建有组的马里巴，吃了在大理查瓦西面的，对吧？对过去的那么学为什么？
Whether I think about myself or others, it is because of this ignorance of how things really are, the various coarse and subtle forms of ignorance that block any of us from achieving a stable happiness.
对，你大概在我做嘛，他这个在我书记这个，是这个第一期的那个是，我书记这个这个一。
So we think, I want to help them clear that, and I want to help myself, but also all of those other beings to achieve not just temporary happiness, but to achieve ultimate happiness. And for that purpose, I will achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Bring forth bodhicitta.
对，从去上不要老年我看不是，刚才看我看刚才他差，从我说说，我一顿了，对我就，
I think in order to actualize that state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings, I will think about the complete path. What are the parts of the path to Buddhahood that are easier? What are the parts that are more difficult? I will create a foundation within my mind to understand all of those completely.
哎呀，
So we'll pause there. Sorry.
你这是。
Oh, Jason.
我到底下第一天就给他跟我谈你了，我那么去给他接了吧。
So an easy motivation to begin with.
我这里那些东西说是比较的，俺都是连我都记得他我家人那是有时些有的些呀，说说个出发点就到马去吧去，马出发点了就家里头呢，
What was it?
这么多。
Vale, loso.
那个什么我的些都做了都等你就做了，我托了啊伢。
Vale.
也来我上班的，你这三万是怎么说的？
So some of the holy beings, right, they talk about when we develop our motivation, these sort of meditations, these motivations and so forth, they're something that's relatively easy to understand and to bring forth in the mind. And because of that, they bring an immediate benefit. Yet they say that we focus only on the difficult things that we can't bring forth, like the stages of generation and completion of Tantra. And because of that, we neglect those things that will immediately bring nourishment to our mind.
あ、でこういう見とってもまで、でこうやってもちゃうよ、まるで、
And because we haven't established these easy things first and established that foundation within our mind based upon those things that we can cultivate, right? Then we're not able to achieve that elusive success in the other practices.
だっててでやってんでもれんとはスペナジペチジャバイのジスヨルビアサーとソソロペアンバトね、ハレウセツマザペドチモジレ、なぞだなんだわちんでもしなたおめ。
So, for an example, let us take the mind of rejoicing. If we practice rejoicing, that is something that immediately brings forth benefit to ourselves, and it also helps us to purify a lot of unwholesome karma. But Geshe is saying that if he takes himself as an example, he doesn't really strive in a practice of rejoicing in a really consistent way, right? So we lose out on that benefit.
그러나 가로수 세대 가로수 타 예전에 도 야고 통고요 말이지.
Ale, oh,
다 아니뭐로
yeah, yeah,
소소도 녀도 요아로
yeah, yeah.
다 예전에 가도 마통아
Yeah.
동생.
And so with that rejoicing, it's like we don't see the things that are closest to us. The mind doesn't see the things that are closest to us that would allow us to practice, right? So that's a bit of a paradox.
사대는 뭐지 지세적으로 교화사 한다고 대리 별일라고 할래야겠네서 기 배우야 되니 일나 전에 가서 싫었던 거지요.
And that practice of rejoicing is something that is so close to us. It is available to us and it is easy for us to do. But because perhaps it's too close, because perhaps it's too easy, we somehow neglect it, thinking it's not important.
말로서 그 차도 세세대한테 좀만서야 다 할래야 초도 잡아지래. 매라고 매나지.
But rejoicing is the supreme medicine which can help us to defeat that pernicious affliction of jealousy.
그와 어떤 소설을 배워 비켜봐봐 뭐지 그거로 할 때는 어떤 간서 저라지 야게 도문이와.
It also can help us to achieve a vast rainfall of merits, of positive karma, yet we neglect it.
라마 총카피 때라 친구요. 지지게 로세한테 뭐가 중요. 라체 총데 라게라 지지게 주주수 왜와 제모 먹이봐.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
매도 제모 먹이봐. 자체모서 더야다.
Lama Tsongkhapa has said that in terms of the practice of rejoicing, there is nothing that requires such little effort, but brings forth such a great result. In other words, with just a little bit of work, we are able to accumulate a vast amount of merit. There is no practice that has that sort of quality other than rejoicing. So, of course, what we need to do is take those practices that we cultivate that are immediately available to us, that we can bring forth into the mind, and just contemplate those for a minute or 10 minutes and infuse the mind with virtue and then proceed to the other practices. So, for example, also the practice of prostration. Even if you do just one prostration, it is said that the merit that you accumulate equals the atoms that you covered, right? The atoms that are underneath your body that you cover when you prostrate. So think about the incredible merit that is accumulated just on the basis of that one prostration. So if we take the opportunity for those practices that are doable, that are easy for us, and we put some effort into those, then we create a good foundation and slowly, we cultivate more advanced things. So there was a great student of Geshe, Atisha, known as Dromtumpa Gyawa Jungne. Dromtumpa Gyawa Jungne. So I'm going to try to explain this example in a colloquial English because I think it's going to make it easier. So Dromtunpa praised his teacher, Lord Atisha, saying, he took all of the Buddha's instructions and placed them on a square of cloth, which allowed me to grasp them. So what that analogy means is if you place things carefully on like a big square of cloth, if you are able to pull on just one corner on that point of focus, you can bring all of the things that the cloth is containing towards you. So that's what the example means. So all of those steps were something to put into practice, to that corner that we grasp on, right? There was nothing that was left out or saying, I'll practice this or I'll practice that. Through practicing properly, grasping on that one corner of understanding, we're able to bring it all forth. And this was especially important, right, that Atisha made it all available as one point of practice to pull everything together, because at that time in Tibet, there were views that were saying Sutra and Tantra are contradictory, so you can't practice both. Similarly, the Mahayana and the Shravakayana, right, the teachings of universal liberation and individual liberation, these are at odds, so they cannot be practiced together. So Atisha was showing that that was mistaken. So if we know how to focus and use that focus to pull all of the instructions together, like that corner on our cloth, we know where everything fits. So Geshe was just mentioning that Pabonka Rinpoche, it is said that if he found a piece of scripture on the ground, just one line of scripture, he would immediately be able to say sort of which stage of the path it fell into, because he had that whole comprehension in his mind. So Geshe said a lot of preliminary talking, sorry, now to the text. But hopefully some important meanings in that. And so in terms of, we talked about, we were in a section of a text which talks about 16 prayers, and we covered 13 of those. And also, when we read the words, Geshe said, not just to see it as prayers, right, but to see it as actually things that we want to aspire to practice. That'll make this more effective for the mind. Yeah. So then we talked also a lot in the prayers and up to this point about a lot of the difficulties within the mind and how those can be cleared away. And now we come to a discussion in particular of the antidotes. So it's a prayer to be able to, with those antidotes that we can cultivate, to integrate into those mind streams as much as possible. And for those antidotes that remain out of our grasp, to be able to, through our prayers of aspiration, achieve the capacity to cultivate those antidotes in the future. Purifying the power of all contaminated actions, crushing the power of disturbing emotions at their root, diffusing the power of interfering forces, I shall perfect the power of bodhisattva practice. So we are on page 8, second verse from the bottom. So these nazo legi topnang yongsu da jeching, right? Did it, right? Yeah. I think yeah, lotari. Yeah. So we'll notice that within this shloka or this verse, there are 4 lines, and similarly, there are 4 important meanings contained within those 4 lines. So when we say purifying the power, legi topnang yongsu dak cheching, right? So when we talk about purifying the power of all contaminated actions, or purifying the power of all karma, right? We know that that's just, we're talking about negative karma. And there are different types of karma, right? Wholesome karma, unwholesome karma, and neutral. So here we're understanding that what we're clearing away is specifically non-meritorious karma. In other words, negative karma, karma that will bring forth problems.
다 레행 바 간지 지바 이나요 다 생각 차로 뭐 요하러 와서 그때 강가로 요서 다바 시게 어디 매와서 이 세야.
And so whatever evil karma, whether big or small, I am going to completely, through crushing the afflictive emotions, clear that karma away.
야 매와서 게 이제 가르래. 다시 시고 와. 어다 무게 레테 진 소소세가 놀러 보게 바차도 야바 이나. 어다 뒤누지 지레스.
And why do we need to clear that away? Well, it's very clear from our own experience. As long as that negative karma stays there within our mind, it will impede us, right? It is like a poison.
소소 가라 되는데 뒤라고 지 놀러 하고서는 다 멤버 가가 이나 때는 소소 매와서 다시 강가서 그래 왔어.
And we want to get rid of that negative karma as much as possible. Just like if we took some food that was contaminated with poison, we would go to the hospital and we would want the doctor to get that poison out of our body by any means necessary.
당연히 쉬어인 다 레행 바 간지 지바 이나요 다 뒤야 대 누지래 돼요.
So if we have a deep realization or understanding of karma, we really would see negative karma as just as serious thing as poison.
그래서 어데래 그래서 빼나 야 다야 나저 때 뭐 마다는 돈실 하고요 말이스 빼나 다 좀들인데 이게 통살라요 강에 나면은 이렇게 가센티스
So if we look around the world in terms of the results of negative karma, look around the world and think of all of the beings enduring really difficult things.
다 강에 전부 요데 다 전부 때 주주이는 가서 내려와서 강에 들어서 소소 들어가 있다 강에 전부 때지 강에 체되게 강가로 소소가 빌레팅 지금 요데가 강에 전부 체크 뭐뭐 두어스 하제 강에 전부 체크 뭐뭐 두어스 아니네라 하고서 와서 대지 강에 누워야 돼 소소가 레까지 비디오 소소가 누워야 돼
Ti pekensa. Konso kange tuyati. Sorry, I'm totally misunderstanding him today. Tesgo. Midi kange nyongi yores, roa. Ding anso la tene chungores. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so it is said. Okay, now I understand. So it is. It's just, I don't know. It was said in it seemed esoteric at first. So if we look at those beings that are experiencing problems, if we look at those beings that are experiencing terrible difficulties, right? Perhaps we ourselves, we experience minor inconveniences, but if we look at the beings that suffer terribly and we feel for them and we understand that that suffering is the result of their negative karma, that understanding will compel us to purify our own negative karma. So of course, with those beings who suffer in that way, there are external conditions that manifest that facilitate that suffering. But from the point of view of the most important cause, we understand that the most important cause is the unwholesome karma they accumulated to meet that suffering. And so if we understand that, then we understand that we ourselves have also created the causes to experience that kind of suffering, and then we will be compelled to purify. Sorry. So no matter whether that karma is big or small, whether that negative karma is big or small, if we do not take the steps to purify it, we will have to experience its unfortunate results. And how do we get rid of that negative karma? In order to completely purify that negative karma, there are 4 points that we need to consider. And so what are these 4 points? These are the 4 opponent powers of purification, and they are extremely powerful. So powerful that the Buddha said that even a karma of immediate retribution, for example, we talk about the 5 heinous crimes, even a karma of immediate retribution can be purified. And so, of course, the Buddha is not going to mislead us. He has no reason to mislead us. So we really can trust that this is the case. If it's someone like Geshe, like he said, just telling you something, you maybe don't want to have that complete level of trust. But if it's the Buddha, we can definitely have complete confidence and trust in what he says. Yeah. So when we talk about powerful karma, or we talk about the power of karma, how powerful is that? It is powerful enough to have a vessel full of liquid be perceived as a nectar by those in the Deva realm, be perceived as water by human beings, and be perceived as pus by pretas or hungry ghosts. That is how powerful karma is. So we see water, right? As human beings, we see water. This is a given. And those devas, right? Those in those kind of godlike realms, they perceive amrit, nectar. And those hungry ghosts, in fact, the hungry ghosts that are a little bit better off, they may see like pus or mucus or something like that. And the hungry ghost who has the most negative karma, they'll perceive it as empty. They won't even see any liquid at all. So when we talk about the power of karma, it has that power for those different experiences. So in Tibet, right, in Lhasa, there's the Jo image. It's an image of the Buddha in the Jokang, the main cathedral in Lhasa, and people from the other provinces, from Kham and Amdo, they would often travel to Lhasa to view it. So a bunch of pilgrims were going to view the Jo image of the Buddha, and most of them could see this beautiful statue. There was one amongst the pilgrims, and he didn't see anything there, right? He just saw like a wall. He didn't perceive the statue at all. And so he asked the Lama for advice, and the Lama said, if you apply yourself in accumulation of positive karma and purification of negativities, you'll be able to see the statue. And so many other stories also about how karma really affects our experience of the world, our perceptions on that fundamental level. There's also the story of Asanga, right, who finally had that vision of Maitreya at the end of his retreat, and he was so overjoyed that he carried Maitreya on his shoulders into the village, but nobody in the village saw anything at all on his shoulders except for one woman who possessed a little bit better karma, but she thought he was carrying a dog. So really, that is how karma can fundamentally affect our perceptions. 말이 디코스니 타마타마디 키네코
세시 와서 내 진짜 세시게 도와서 내가 좀 그 네가 쇼서 깨깨 자기 와서
Uh-huh.
이제 내가 좀 동의 와 말아 건조게
Yeah.
다 걸어서 건너 너가 자산지
Yeah. So it was only that woman who was able to perceive that dog, but all the others thought that Asanga was walking around with nothing on his shoulders whatsoever, right? And so they thought that he had gone crazy. Sorry, was someone trying to tell me something? I heard a voice. Okay, yes. All right. Oh, listen.
그러지 그러지
I'm going.
어다 들리지래서 내또 대세 트레스나 소소도 뭐 많이 빌레 라면 도와서
So that is like the power of karma to kind of affect our perceptions, right?
어다 되래도 레저도 노면서 다시지 서로 어다 레저도 다도 그냥 레두가 강가로 파 다봐서 이 스피니 뭐
So that is the purifying the power of all the contaminated actions.
다데 다바시아발라 알랭한도 다지 레저기 네서 레니아바 페제와 레 마시바도 마제바 레시바 첨무사와 대지고자지 같이 뭐
And so to purify the power of all contaminated actions, in other words, to purify karma, it's also really important to have an understanding of karma, how karma is certain, how karma increases, how we do not meet with the results of actions that we did not do, and also how the karma that we have accumulated does not perish. In other words, it does not disappear on its own.
어다 되는가로서 거의 거의 이제 레드냐 뭐니가 레드이네서 로스와스
And so we have spoken about in terms of the factors that keep us circling within samsara. They are karma and affliction. And up until this point in the verse, we've mainly been talking about karma.
레드 쪼를 위해서는 말해 쪼게 녀무들래 살 많이 발려요
And so we also understand that out of the two factors that keep us circling, karma and affliction, karma is not the main one, right? It is the afflictions themselves. And that's what we come to in the second part of the verse.
다 때는 다좀 받던 라인이 다좀 받던 리나요 레기 니가 하대야 들이야 레기 니가
Loso.
그래서 이나요 될 조가 체크가 녀무데 매아이자 리우마 토요
So for example, if we take a faux destroyer, right? A faux destroyer may still have imprints of the negative karma that he or she previously accumulated. But because the faux destroyer has defeated the afflictions, that's the foe that was destroyed, those negative karmas cannot cause disturbance because the basis for those experiences causing disturbance, the afflictions, has been cleared away.
다 동반행에서도 또 차이지 다야 또 차네라 근데 다 제목 가서
So that means that when we have that direct realization of emptiness, we have gotten rid of that powerful factor that facilitates the suffering.
나도 단다 레트는 대저도 콘도가 치도 레인다고 치는 코스에 다니라더니 거와시와 이너레 리고 강가 쪼 되라 되는 거야.
So right now, because we have not only those imprints of the negative karmas within our mind, but also they are like watered and fertilized with the afflictions such as anger, attachment, and so forth. It's like the story of the unfolding of those karmas and experiences that keep us circling within samsara.
동반이 재면도 다 동반이에서도 돈을 대리 줘로 왔어. 아니 내저도 콘도가 거 배드 매바도 줘야 말했더니 씨 휴지로 다 줘요.
So that moment that we have that semitopa ngosutopa. So as we develop that valid cognition of emptiness and eventually that direct realization of emptiness, those negative karmas might still exist as latencies within the mind. But because the afflictions have been uprooted, they cannot manifest in a powerful way and cause us that suffering.
가서는 아야죠 수사서 왔을 뭐냐를 태도사왔던지 거한테 몸에 맞아서 어때 대지티래 맞아 소리야 매와.
And so that is why Aryadeva said, right, that if one just merely has a doubt, a thought, like, is emptiness like this or like that, this will shake the very foundations of samsara.
다 네모 어느 더 학고가 일단 나도 강아지 바로 와서 다 주어나 호텔 아니 또 주유소는 돈한테 왜 저소는 돈한테 말했어.
And in terms of the afflictions themselves, there are different presentations of all of these afflictions. So they come, for example, in a list of 6 and in a list of 10.
이제는 주의세, 자녀 주의세 말해서 뭐지?
And if we have this brief list of 6, these are known as the 6 root afflictions.
다 뭐를 또 우리는 따와나도 따문가도 다 못해서 말해서
Hawa, dang?
따와나, 따밍아.
Yeah. And so as we expand on that, we have a list of 10 afflictions.
다들 알지가 그래 그래서 그래.
Indeed.
다 저저도 들으서들이 뭐지하고 왔어.
And the main ones also out of those 6 are the ones that we know as the 3 poisons, and those everybody will be familiar with: attachment, anger, and ignorance. So all of those disturbing emotions at the root of karma, we are going to completely clear those away. We are going to crush their power. And in terms of getting rid of the coarser manifestations of the afflictions, it is really possible as an antidote to those to meditate on things like patience, love, compassion, and eventually bodhicitta. So the next one is diffusing the power of interfering forces. So Geshe said we can think, for example, of the 4 maras. So what the translator here is giving as interfering forces, you can almost think of it as being like mara or demon. Yeah. 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 So if we think about those, I knew something today for a change. Doesn't happen very often, so I have to rejoice when it does, right? Yeah, it's like when Kendrick fills in a blank, it's like, you know, the most amazing thing in the world. It's not. It's just like a very temporary moment of rejoicing. So when we speak about these 4 maras or these 4 afflictions, right, we talk about the mara of the afflictive emotions, the mara of the aggregates, the mara of the Lord of Death, and the mara of the Son of the Gods, or the Deva Putra mara. And these 4 we've covered before, right? And we can expand on these, right? Like some presentations talk about the 4 coarse manifestations of these maras or demons and the 4 subtle manifestations of these maras or demons. And so all of these, I am going to get rid of them. I'm going to diffuse their power. And so if I'm going to get rid of all of these important things, right? The negative karmas, the disturbing emotions, that are the afflictions, as well as these maras or interfering forces, how do I actually defeat all of those? I shall perfect the power of the bodhisattva practice. It is through the power of the bodhisattva practice that these can be defeated. So, of course, the bodhisattvas, they engage in many wonderful, all good practices, but if we were to kind of simplify them, they all fit into the practices of method and the practices of wisdom. So we shall perfect the power of the bodhisattva practices, right? The power as the antidote to those 3 obstacles. So really, when we talk about power, right, it comes from the Tibetan word top, and we'll see this word top in a lot of different contexts. So, for example, we talk about top nga, the 5 powers. This is also a very important thing. Yes. So Geshe said that if you're interested in these 5 powers, actually, in some of his shorter meditation videos, he's outlined these. So we talked about the power of the force, the power of the white seed, and so forth. So if you're interested, you can watch those meditations.
Yeah, Lama说他那就那些全部进来，俺都说他看第一了，可以小就那偏多少对这多嘛的是，
Yeah.
他可是老多的话，那时候是偏多的话，但是就话多的了，他什么多你这种小就这个时候他但是偏多去。
So the Lamas say that in terms of the power of momentum or the power of the force we direct our attention, we direct that force, that effort to all of our plans for today, for next month, for so forth, to all of our worldly activities. But what the Lamas instruct us to do is to use that force in a different way and direct that force, direct that momentum of our energy to developing things like love, compassion, bodhicitta, and so forth. So putting the force into the correct direction is a little bit difficult at the beginning because we're not habituated to investing our energy in those things. But remember the words of Shantideva that there is nothing that does not become easier through the power of familiarity. Once we get used to it, it becomes easier.
Come back,
yeah. So if we for so for example, we know that when we first go somewhere, if perhaps we don't have a house, then the hardest part is putting the house together, whether we make it out of wood or whether we make it out of metal or bricks. But then once the house is in place, it becomes easier to do all of our activities. So in this way, once the force of habituation is in place, we'll be able to direct our energy to the right things easily. Yes. And of course, making a house itself is not such an amazing thing. Geshe was thinking of all the birds that come this time of year, and they're very skilled at making their houses. And why are the birds just able to naturally make those nests, to make those houses? It's because of their previous habituation to that task. So we will just do a few verses of In Praise of Dependent Arising. Sorry, I just needed a sip of water. We are good to go, though, I promise. All right. Oh, decent. Tenchu kyogi dempa la denjung tongwa lepar na deyang kundu mepa tang rangjingini yope min. So we are on verse 13. So verse number 13. Therefore, in your teaching, seeing dependent origination is hailed, that too not as an utter non-existence, nor as an intrinsic existence. So this is a continuation of Lama Tsongkhapa praising the teaching of the Buddha by reason of dependent origination. Yes. So when we speak about emptiness, right, we understand, though, that this emptiness is not a mere nothingness. And so many people, though, when they hear emptiness, they think we're talking about non-existence, that emptiness means there is nothing there at all. But to be clear, this is not the case. And similarly, when we talk about dependent arising, there will be some people that hear, oh, dependent arising, it arises on causes, therefore it exists inherently, right? It has some sort of self-existence. But that reification is also incorrect. So to be able to get rid of this thought thinking that emptiness means nothingness and that dependent arising means things truly exist, right? When we understand dependent arising and emptiness together, they assist each other. They are assisting factors for each other. Yeah. So if we think about it in the correct way, when we think about emptiness, that will also infuse our understanding of dependent arising. When we think about dependent arising, that will support our understanding of emptiness. So when we meditate in this way, so that emptiness reinforces dependent arising and dependent arising reinforces emptiness, what benefit do we come to from practicing like that? Well, that I, in terms of this I or this self, that continues to circle through samsara, that circling is rooted in this ignorance grasping at the self. And when emptiness is comprehended, it undermines, it clears away the very root of samsara. Dependent arising, how does that help the situation? Well, in terms of a factor that has from countless lifetimes until the present created the causes and kept us circling in samsara without seeing any way out, so much of the causes of that are related to self-cherishing. In terms of that self-cherishing attitude, the self-centered attitude, what is the most effective way to undermine that? It is an understanding of dependent arising. We should understand, in terms of our situation, the enemy that is causing this, right? It is not some kind of external enemy, right? The main enemy is something that is within us. And also, in terms of that inner enemy, right? There are many branches like attachment, anger, and so forth, but those branches are not the root. We could say that the root is the ignorance grasping at the self, and also we could argue connected with that, the self-cherishing or self-centered attitude. And so, what really helps us to defeat these inner enemies and achieve freedom, it is that dependent arising that undermines self-cherishing and that view of emptiness, which allows us to uproot the ignorance grasping at the self. It is these two which can lead us to freedom. So this is a very profound truth, because even if every single person in the world became a highly qualified material scientist, they wouldn't be able to solve this problem of what keeps us rooted in samsara. So therefore, this truth is very profound. Yeah. So we can see also, the more we investigate these teachings, it will only the clearer they will become. We will not be able to find faults. And we can say that attachment, anger, jealousy, and so forth, all of these arise connected with what? With that I, or with that self, and specifically with the ignorance grasping that self, seeing it in a way that it isn't really.
그래서 다른 다 동반이 세 로지지야 말에 세대한테 무슨 말이 방아 나세대 저대한테 요 말다 시요래데 되게
So the emptiness saying that things do not exist inherently, it is saying that there is no inherent existence to that I, to that self. It's addressing the very misconception that is creating all of the problems.
그래서 어떤 영무 감각을 내가 매봐줘야 알아지래 살아야 되지 말고
So that wisdom of emptiness, it is able to completely stop those afflictions from being able to operate. Therefore, it is a very powerful teaching.
인주세대 소화슬레바 얘는 다 얘는 저도 게 뭐지 초발할 때는 중앙에 이렇게 지시를 해봤어.
So when we think about dependent arising, what is this an awareness of? It's an awareness of anything or any experience. It arises due to a coming together of the appropriate causes and conditions.
다 내려오시 봐야는 알아서 단다사야 뒤야 내산리도 소속 집어 말다 얘는 뭐
And if we take that and think about it a little bit more, what does that mean? It means whatever we eat, whatever we drink, the home we enjoy living in. These didn't just arise from ourselves because we bought it. It arose also from the labor and many other causes and conditions coming together.
소속 그랬더니 소속 집어 조자치 뭐지 내가 대단히 농아 자자자래 요하시 알았다.
Huh?
소속 집어 자치 뭐지 기소돼야 돼.
Yeah.
어떠다 건네도 논요하시.
So if we understand that everything that we enjoy is connected to others, then we'll see that this attitude that holds ourself as the most important and neglects the needs of others. In other words, self-cherishing is mistaken.
그래서 다 되게 자다 그러니 다 좋은 일이 매와서 그랬다. 알가서 제소노 또는 가제소노 또는 다 야르야르야 그냥 생각해.
So therefore, dependent arising and emptiness, which help us to defeat the true inner enemies of the ignorance grasping at the self and self-cherishing, are very important. And so we must exert ourselves to improve our understanding of these.
다 리치 땡주 걸어요. 야 땡주 이자 로지트 바래.
There are many people, however, who have a fundamental misunderstanding that we say if things are dependent arising, yes, they are dependent arising, but they do arise and they exist. In other words, they're holding a kind of inherent existence. And so the glorious Chandrakirti and other proponents of the Prasangika school, they made very strong statements about this. So if we talk about fire, for example, if a fire manifests, we use water to put it out. But if the water is abiding within fire, in other words, if the fire overtakes the water, then it cannot put it out. So dependent arising, actually, this understanding of dependent arising should refute this thought of inherent existence. But if our cultivation of our understanding of dependent arising leads us to things that think things exist, then it is like that water that is completely encompassed by fire and cannot put the fire out. In other words, it's not of use to us. So if we cultivate dependent arising and emptiness together, the dependent arising reinforcing the emptiness and the emptiness reinforcing the dependent arising, and we develop a real understanding of this, we will have a feeling as if we have really found a most precious jewel. And also, it helps us to unfold that experience in meditation. So for example, those who focus primarily on emptiness don't put as much effort into cultivating dependent arising. It is said that at that moment where they have that realization of emptiness, a fear will manifest in their mind. Yeah. And so that's not everybody, but it's those particular meditators. Those who haven't focused on dependent arising as much. But one who has cultivated conscientiously emptiness and dependent arising together, at the point that he or she comes to realization, rather than having a feeling of fear, they'll have this feeling as if they have found the most precious jewel. So much, yeah. So Geshe said that we have at least covered today a few verses of both of these texts. We've covered the majority, but there are parts that are left to both. But Geshe is just drawing your awareness to the fact that I think it is for 3 weeks we will be having other activities, right? We won't be doing these texts. So Geshe said, of course, don't feel that because there's not class happening, there's no opportunity to receive the Dharma. Because, of course, Khensu Rinpoche Losang Delek will be with us, and his presence here means that we have many opportunities to engage with the Dharma and to accumulate merit. So Khensu Rinpoche Losang Delek is a really exceptional person, and he is older, right? He's 84 years old, yet he expresses the Dharma with complete clarity in a truly resonant voice. So he really is a very exceptional teacher. So many people, actually talk about this particular quality of Khensu Rinpoche, that despite his advanced age, the absolute clarity of his teachings that are given in a voice that is powerful, strong, and pleasant to listen to. And so these will be on pause for that time, but Geshe said, please review, read over the parts of the text that we've already covered and develop a stable understanding in your mind in the meantime. So thank you very much. And then with a happy mind, let us dedicate the merits. Changju Zemjo Rinpoche Maje Panam Jeju Rechi Chewan Yamba Meba Yang Gone Gondu Bewar Sho Tongni Tawa Rinpoche Maje Panam Jeju Rechi Chewan Yamba Mebaya Gone Gondu Bewar Shu Jambe Bao Jita Kyamba Tang Kundu Sambo Deyan Dejinde Deda Kungi Jesu Dalo Chir Gewa Dida Dangje Rabdu Mo Dusu Shebe Gyawa Dangje Gi Ngowa Gangla Chodu Ngabade Dagi Gewe Zawa Digun Gyo Zambo Jeji Rabdu Ngowa. Through the powers of these merits, may the cause of any problem within samsara be completely cleared away, so that beings may experience happiness. May all of the realms within samsara where there is suffering, including the lower realms, even the hells, be completely purified and manifest like a pure land. So we can pause there. And there is time for questions if people would like to ask some questions. If you do need to get on with your day, please feel free. But if you'd like to stay for questions, don't be shy.
Nina has a question.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dinah.
Hi there.
Dinah.
Yes, Geshe Rinpoche was delegated to teach in Costa Rica. The Dalai Lama visited there in 89 and 92, and he's been made several trips there, but hasn't since before COVID started. So I don't know whether it's possible, but if his followers in Costa Rica, if there could be like a Spanish translator for some of the teachings, or maybe, one teaching that would be translated.
Yeah, Dinah, anyone is welcome to listen to the Tibetan or the English and offer their own translation. Like often people step in and offer that. We don't have anybody who, Dave, do we have anyone who can translate into Spanish? I'm not sure that we do, to be honest.
There may be somebody in Costa Rica because
yes,
I guess
but
Robert
they are
Thurman
very
gave a
welcome
teaching there, and they had a simultaneous translator for them.
Yeah, no, people are absolutely welcome to do that. And in fact, a few times when Geshe has given some special events, there's a translator in Italy, Anna Maria, who's translated for Geshe before, and she just will listen to the Tibetan and offer a channel where people can listen in other languages. So yeah, no, they're absolutely welcome to. Ngamati kensu rinpoche di lo jachu jagu gupchu nangola ko Costa Rica Spain ke gikechesa. Numadi jawarum buche la tene de la chichaus. Di kensurum buche chibarade. Kensurum buche de la yaba. Oh, jeje, Costa Rica, Tengmani. Topoyet. Gachu gya gubshu na dedi. Kalikabu saro. 1989, 1990. Yeah. What years did you say he was there, Dinah?
1989 and 1992.
Gupshu go, yeah, Jachu ja gu dang gupshu go ni. Yomare na chena dedi. Mare, Costa Rica, Lo America, South America, Lo America.
Central America.
Thinks you're thinking of a different person, Dinah, and I think so too. So what I would suggest you do, we have some posters with a picture of Khensu Rinpoche. Just check that it's the same person. But according to my recollection, he would have been at the monastery at that time. I don't think he was traveling before the mid-90s, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. I think he came after. The 89 and 92 were when the Dalai Lama, His Holiness, visited Costa Rica. And then he delegated Khensu Rinpoche to go down after that. That I'm not sure when he went. But, he hasn't been down there since before COVID.
Yeah. Like in the last 10 years, he hasn't been there for sure. This I can say, but before that, I'm not sure. Yeah, but it's definitely possible. Maybe if you send our flyer, they'll know, right? They'll recognize him if it's the same person. Okay,
great.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. And I just want to be very clear, like if people would like, because we've had some requests also for Mandarin, for other languages, if people can understand the Tibetan, or if they can understand my English and they want to offer translations, that's only a good thing, right? Because it benefits more beings. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, I have a question, which is, can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. How is karma associated with the merely designated I?
Le seriedi dang tapsangi dag drewa kandesh chigyeres. Rwa karinsana dag di taksam redu ayine layers di kandesh trogir.
Tedo sechime, tate lila sekare. Tangazu tata leka yoga duga china.
So when we engage in an action, whether good or bad, the energy of that action is karma, right? So the karma is the first thing that manifests. So what holds the potentiality of that karma? The merely designated self, or the merely designated I. But we understand that when that comes into the merely designated self or I, it manifests in the mind not as action, not as karma, but as a potentiality, right? So it exists in that continuum as a potentiality. Right? And so the merely labeled self or the merely labeled I, right, which is together with the mind, that is where those potentialities are stored. So to give perhaps a more relatable example, think about an apple seed. An apple seed has within it a potentiality to bring forth apples. You don't see the apple there yet, but that potentiality exists within the seed. So yeah, so the merely designated self we can think as like that seed which holds the potentiality of the apples within it. In other words, that seed which holds the potentiality of karma within it. Mhm. So what's the other part of this story? If the conditions are not there, if that apple seed is not planted in the soil and watered and fertilized properly, it won't sprout, it won't become the tree and bring the apples. So similarly, until the potentialities of karma meet with the appropriate conditions in which they can manifest, they will not manifest, right? But we know that that potentiality is there, just like the power of the apple seed to perhaps bring forth apples exists unless the seed is scorched or destroyed somehow. As long as that seed abides, it abides with that potentiality. The same is true of this merely designated self and karma. So, okay. Yeah. And that merely labeled self is with us all the time. So it doesn't matter if we stay in a big house or a small house, in a flat or in a mansion. That self is abiding there no matter what the container. And as we just switch from one house to another, also when we switch from one lifetime to another, that merely designated I or self is still there, right? It doesn't go away. So one of Geshe-la's friends who expresses things in maybe a bit of an impertinent way, he said, death is not like really that big of a deal. It's just like going to sleep because we're just taking that merely designated self from one house to another. So dying is no more significant than going to sleep. So like when we fall asleep and we wake up, it's almost in a way like starting again. So it's like a small death is experienced in a way. Yeah. So that merely designated self, yes, it is what holds those potentialities which of karma, which eventually manifest as results. But we know that the story can sometimes be a long one, right? So perhaps certain karmas, they're not going to manifest as results for even hundreds of years, right? Lifetimes later. Did that answer your question, Dave?
Yeah, partially. I've got additional questions associated with this.
Sure.
So negative karma is associated with the merely designated I, and when which merely designated I has the appearance of being inherently existent. When we directly perceive the absence of the inherent existence of that merely designated I, that negative karma is destroyed, but the positive karma associated with that merely designated I, even when we see its absence of inherent existence, the positive karma is maintained. So how does that work? Assuming that what I said was correct, how does that work?
Yeah. Okay. I think I got it. Yes. Okay. Nganso taksam gidag seria de roa le nyargi res chik labswan roa dene nganso di dag seria de rangshingi drupa gi nangwa chik yores roa nganso rangshingi drupa nangwa di mepa sona roa dene kange teagi le mejo gi duas. 강에테 투비오마레스 레데이네 간소 게웨레 소나미엠페레 루아 간소 랑싱기 주바기 닥디 나와 메바소나나 소남기레 메조게마레스 케체셰레요마레스 디카레체스사
그때 매번 줘야 다시도 걸을 내가 제요 말아왔어. 키고 내가 시계도 말해. 그 간도 해야 되러 왔어.
Ale ane dikpele kandisalgare tangsin ma rigpa dang drawa tsang tompani tona di me paso jogres. Gimsen zirebe. Gimsen sabo kumas. Sorry.
야, 간데스.
Nganso dikpele nyomonga tene yongi yares. Nyomongi tsawa chatsangwa tangsin ma rigpa res. Nganso di rangjingi drupa mes hakona tangsin ma rigpa me paso jogire tua. Dene le nyampa karyena tangzima riba dang jawa yo tsang mepa drogi re tu as yene sonam yimpe le tangzima riba dang jawa yo dang me di yang kechi shi sa chi tu nga di se gya
야, 저거 멤버로 봐. 다니야. 왜냐면 다때 야, 데모도래, 좋아. 이나요, 왜냐면 다 코프게 그러길래 냄비는 지거든. 내가 같이 왔어. 내가 너도 말이 받은 와. 최근다.
So, okay, I was to clarify your question, Dave. I was taking it to what I thought was a consequence. So maybe I narrate that for you first, and then I tell you what Geshe said, and then maybe we can come to an understanding. So, I think your question is coming because we're saying that that any karma that that the karma that's accumulated based upon an appearance of inherent existence is connected to this ignorance grasping at the self, right? And when we realize emptiness, right, that is the direct antidote to ignorance grasping at the self, and therefore that karma should be cleared away. But usually when we speak of this, we talk about the negative karma being cleared away. But is the positive karma that we accumulate also not often accumulated, seeing that appearance of inherent existence? So why is it that we do not speak about positive karma being cleared away? So Geshe-la's, and if I'm wrong in what I'm expressing, Dave, you stop me at any point.
That's consistent.
So,
that's consistent.
Is that consistent? Okay.
Yeah.
So what Geshe was saying to that is, yes. Ale, yine tamı niga jawa yores tansi marwa. Yeah. So again, ale. Meritorious karma, the accumulator of meritorious karma, is not necessarily the ignorance grasping at the self. The main accumulator, the main agent that achieves that meritorious karma, that positive karma, is not necessarily ignorance grasping at the self. Because it is not the main agent that accumulates the meritorious karma, when we meditate on emptiness and we defeat the ignorance grasping at the self, it doesn't clear away that meritorious karma. Loso. Yeah, 하고서. Yeah. The main agent propelling the accumulation of negative karma, on the other hand, is the ignorance grasping at the self. Therefore, when we meditate upon the antidote to ignorance grasping at the self, the wisdom realizing emptiness, because it is the main agent behind the accumulation of negative karma, that negative karma is cleared away.
Got it. Okay, so then you could say that the meritorious karma is associated with an understanding that the validity of dependent arising, that one's existence depends on so many others, and that gives rise to compassion. And so that good karma then remains after the falsity, the appearance of an independent existence, disappears.
Sorry, Dave, just to be clear, here you're talking about a specific type of good karma, right? Like an action with a motivation of love or compassion that understands the interconnectedness of all sentient beings, right?
Yes.
Dene perna nganso di jambadang ningje la tene gewa dabochik sanana jambadang ningje di tenshungchi gyore karinsana nganso semshin cha tsangwadang Drawachik Yures di samne Rua dene di che papo to da bochagi Yures dene sonam giledi medro gimendus di da boredes. Correct. Yes. Yes. So the understanding is correct.
아니 야 저기 선발로 소매를 내세요. 아니 거기 편바디야 레모 뭐지 그거 알아봤어.
Ah,
저기 선발로
samile.
소매를 내.
Samigile.
어
Samigile.
저기 선발 파파를 알려서나
Loso.
소매를 내도 어다 지금 내도 지금 뭐 제대로 레모 뭐야.
So that's why the Bodhisattva, when they reach these Arya levels, right, they accumulate what is called uncontaminated karma, because the karma is not contaminated by any sort of afflicted motivation whatsoever. It is only arising due to their efforts to achieve the welfare of all sentient beings.
예.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome, Dave. You're welcome. No, that was a good exploration. That was good. Does anyone else have a question?
I'm just wondering, we as people who are still kind of, like, do we have the potential of creating that type of merit?
The
Even though we are
uncontaminated
still
one?
the uncontaminated merit, like, are we still able to accumulate that, even at our stages right now?
Nganso tanda jangshub sempa metsang nganso soso kewa yina nganso sagmegile di satugirebes. Karinsa nganso jangshub sempa nangshin kunong nampadapa yongbi omares. Then nganso sagmegile satugirebes.
내도 말이야.
We cannot accumulate that uncontaminated karma. Sonam gile satugires ine sagme sonam gile mares.
야, 뭐 도끼를 짓어서 야가. 뭐가 도끼를 잡아서 내가.
Yeah. So Geshe said like we accumulate merits, but yes, they are contaminated because we haven't defeated the afflictions. Karetuke?
내일에 또 저거 모서 도끼를 왔었다.
Yeah.
소매가 더 맞다.
But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't accumulate the meritorious karma, right? Even if it is a little bit contaminated, we still have to accumulate whatever meritorious karma we can, right?
소설다 소매가 내려오면 됐다. 대래 담에 랭인에서 이전에 또 많이 거려 소화슈 더벌레니 아주야 뭐야.
And if you wanted to accumulate perfectly uncontaminated meritorious karma, then what do you have to do? Just realize emptiness. Yeah, that would be the first step. You realize emptiness, and then